Go ahead.
Okay. So I made up a few slides before and it had said you don't need to do anything. Oh, how do I move it on? Right, hold on. How do I get to the next slide?
Oh, just press the arrow to the right.
This? Oh yeah, here now. So policy report for Work Package 8, Arts and Sports Resolution Media highlights the role of arts and sports in promoting dialogue and collaboration to address issues of othering and differences within communities. It emphasises how engaging in creative arts and sports activities across various country settings can foster reconciliation and mitigate grievances that may lead to radicalisation. The report recognises and values these activities as non-political spaces where individuals can focus on shared experiences and challenges, thereby reducing political tensions and fostering cooperation. Moreover, the report suggests that arts and sports provide opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds to come together, learn from each other and collectively build more resilient futures to confront common challenges. Recommendations address areas of funding and resources, promoting a bottom-up approach to meet the needs of marginalised groups, while addressing a gap in resources allocated to invisible groups and the importance of catering to a wide age demographic. Overall, the report pays attention to the significance of creating welcoming spaces conducive to fostering inclusion and participation. And that's the national context and organisations and the leads from the 5 countries, which were Israel, Poland, Serbia, Slovenia and the UK. In Israel, it was a Netball League Association for Mothers, and in particular with the netball team Desert Foxes. In Poland, is Maria here? Sorry, I can't pronounce the...
Reach the record.
Okay, so this was a football fans association of the club, and I'll talk about it just in a minute. Serbia was a Boys' Day, which is a weekly programme run by InfoPark NGO in Belgrade, Serbia. Slovenia was street theatre and creative dance and movement within the cycle of creative dance and movement workshops. And in UK it was Street Soccer Scotland, which is an NGO that uses football-inspired training and personal development as a medium to empower people. So the kind of key points from the findings were the importance of narrative sharing, belongingness, resilience to othering, radical to de-radical process, importance of arts and sports initiatives, misuse of sporting environments, funding and resources, bottom-up approach, invisible groups, and acknowledging the role of welcome space. These were the kind of 3 main points from the narrative sharing. Do you want me to go over them?
I think
yeah. So storytelling is a fundamental social skill. The act of storytelling is deeply ingrained in human nature and serves as a fundamental social tool. Whether through sports, dance or art, people engage in storytelling as a means of connecting with one another. Building relationships through stories. Sharing personal narratives creates an immediate connection between individuals, fostering meaningful interactions and relationship building. Discovering resonance between one's own story and that of another facilitates deeper connections and shared identities. Expanding perspectives through shared activities. So engaging in arts and sports, we found when people engage in arts and sports activities together, it provides a platform for reconsidering perspectives and encourages collaborative thinking and critical thinking. By sharing spaces and narratives, individuals can explore different ways of being together, ultimately leading away from social isolation and towards a sense of belonging and cooperation. We've spoken a lot about belongingness, and Robin's discussion of it last night of being and longing was really nice. So belonging and identity formation, the concept of belonging plays a central role in shaping individual identities, as it's through social interactions and shared experiences within communities that people derive meaning and establish their sense of self. The social connectedness and well-being, the level of social connectedness individuals experience influences their overall well-being, as feelings of belonging are closely tied to the quality of social relationships. Being part of community fosters a sense of inclusion and provides individuals with a supportive network. Participation in communal activities such as sports and arts and local events offers opportunities for individuals to negotiate their identities, envision future possibilities and cultivate a sense of belonging to the communities they inhabit. These interactions contribute to a sense of comfort and ease within one's social environment, facilitating the process of belonging. And many participants described their involvement in the groups and organisations akin to being part of a family. And this familiar bond fosters hope, purpose and a sense of belonging amongst the members, acting as a counterforce to isolation and alienation and potentially deterring radicalisation process through the supportive social environment provided. And a lot of the participants spoke about being part of a family within the organisation and how being part of the organisation then made them feel more comfortable going into their wider communities and being involved that way. Resilience to othering. Collaborative engagements in sports and arts challenges traditional power structures within groups, prompting individuals to question the value of their voice in society. And that came through very clearly. Feeling invisible amongst peers, acknowledging shared identities and collectively crafting narratives in a supporting environment can motivate individuals to take tangible actions in their daily lives, contributing actively to societal roles. And building resilience through failure, which was a really important part of the arts and sports initiatives. Embracing failure in an iterative process of trial and error, inherent in creative and sporting activities, really fosters resilience, confidence and creative problem solving. These attributes are essential not only for personal well-being, but only for nurturing healthy, diverse and inclusive societies. Within the radical to de-radical process, the positive impact of sports and resilience. The study highlights the positive influence of sports and development resilience against antisocial behaviours such as gender violence and extremism. That came through in the Israel report, but also in the Glasgow report from the Football Initiative and the Football Fans Initiative, where they wanted to be seen not as that other person, not as that violent person. So they were engaging with their communities in that sense. The promotion of female sporting initiatives, investing in female sporting initiatives and creating safe collective spaces not only benefits the female participants, but also enhances the perception of female sports from a male perspective. And that was clear within the Glasgow the football organisation, because there was female teams there too and male teams, and sometimes they play together and sometimes the women beat the male teams, so they were really impressed by how well they played. But also the importance of shared spaces. Shared spaces play a really crucial role in communities and de-radicalisation efforts by providing opportunities for social interactions centred around common interests, which can overshadow individual interests over time. And activities and interactions that challenge these toxic narratives focus on building relationships and highlighting commonalities across social boundaries, emphasising unifying power of story and narratives. And the dance team within Romanas, they were from different nationalities and some of them had been in conflict before that. So it was really important to see. The misuse of sporting environments. So there's a lot of talk about extremist exploitation of sports and platforms for propaganda and recruitment. And the text highlights how extremists leveraging sporting events as avenues for spreading hate and recruiting individuals to their cause, underscoring the need for vigilance within sports fan clubs and organisations. So the fan clubs and organisations play a crucial role in promoting positive behaviour among sporting fans, aiming to mitigate the influence of hate speech and extremist activities by providing alternative avenues for expression and identity building. And fostering community cohesion and peaceful coexistence was an essential aspect of fan clubs' challenge. It's not only addressing unwanted behaviour, but also fostering wider community cohesion and peaceful coexistence among sports fans and neighbouring communities, emphasising the importance of inclusivity and mutual respect. And the fan club in the work package were engaging in community building and events. And saying to each other to behave in a certain way when they were travelling to the football games. The funding and resources, we found that there's a real importance of meaningful social interaction in the de-radicalisation process for individuals with radical beliefs necessitates meaningful social interaction with those who represent the other perspective. And that came across within the football club. There was a lot of discussion about how being in part of the organisation allowed them to play and get to know and interact with people who they normally wouldn't have associated with because they came from a different housing scheme or area of the city, and they would normally avoid those people, but actually they were coming together and they were playing. There is a need for physical spaces where individuals can gather around shared interests, and it's crucial for effective de-radicalisation efforts. These spaces provide a platform for open-ended long-term projects that utilise creative arts, sports and various methodologies to foster dialogue and joint initiatives. And we need a funding for diverse initiatives. So funding should be allocated to support a range of initiatives, including informal groups engaging in arts, sports and arts-related activity to create convivial environments conducive to de-radicalisation and promoting positive social interactions. And these should also be very informal groups that are not necessarily a de-radicalisation programme. They're just ordinary organisations who are engaging in social inclusion activities, bringing people together. They don't necessarily have to have a direct relationship to radicalisation. So utilising sports as a means of promoting positive self-development amongst youth and marginalised individuals and broader communities, so shifting away from solely using it for anti-radicalisation purposes. It's important to address underlying causes of isolation and grievance, rather than just treating them as a personal choice, as governments tend to do, emphasising the importance of providing opportunities for isolated individuals to foster belonging, hope and social connection. And it's really important that we are addressing these causes rather than just reacting to them. Oh, okay, sorry. So the government support for community-based sports and arts initiatives, irrespective of their explicit ties to radicalisation programmes. It's really important to identify invisible groups that beyond the 18 to 28 age group. They tend to get a lot of attention, but there's other groups there. And just really acknowledging the role of welcoming spaces. That's what we found in there. So.
Thank you. Yes.
So on civic education, as Mattia and I, actually,
Next to each other.
making that's such a big pressure on us, because so then the audience expects such a good presentation.
Yeah,
I'm totally unprepared.
I'm just all sure.
No.
I'm all sure, no substance.
No, and I want to make just a short introduction about the challenges that we had to face when addressing the issue of civic education in de-radicalisation or disengagement context. And then Mattia will continue to tell you briefly what are the lessons we learned, let's say. So some of the criticisms behind using civic education in this context, in the context of our project, that are based on common values are first that common values that are the basis of civic education are considered often to be the views of the majority. They reflect the views of the majority, even though common values are included in most of the constitutions. So the criticism is that they don't serve as a common foundation for strengthening social cohesion. Another criticism is that they carry cultural biases. So the question is, are these these values, although are in the constitution of, as I said, most countries, truly universal and common values? There is also the risk of the neutrality and impartiality of teachers or operators, workers that are using this material. So the other criticism is that in the end they cement or they continue their unidirectional assimilationist at the very end. So the risk of the counter indoctrination that we were discussing also these days. They replicate forms of paternalism and power relations, which is exactly what civic education and citizenship education should overcome. Another criticism is that they are overburdened with high expectations because they are considered to be the solutions for all sorts of problems in society, from marginalization to political apathy to extremism, social unrest, and so on. Then another issue, another challenge that we had to face was this disconnection between theory and practice, because there is a lack of uniformity and a sort of leading to a sort of double standard. And the last problem was the methodology. So we had to find and develop a methodology that was creative and attractive enough for participants, but easily to be used by social operators or frontline workers, and so on and so forth. So these are a few of the challenges that we faced, and
starting from those
Mattia has a pleasure to
starting from those challenges, how we approached the writing of this policy brief also was from different perspectives, because we started with a preliminary mapping of all the projects in Europe dealing with the relation between civic education and radicalization. Then, parallelly, also for the development of the role play, we consulted with experts in the field of civic education, and also with scholars involved in previous projects that adopted that approach to radicalization to combat violent behaviors, both in Italy and outside.
Can I say, at least address what Robin was mentioning yesterday, that there is no communication among projects. We try precisely to do this by contacting responsible persons of other projects that were similar to ours.
Which was sometimes very challenging because, frankly, also in the realm of combating radicalization, many of the projects were involved psychologists. So also the discussion was not so easy sometimes. Also with terms, yeah. And for other reasons. But yeah, we conducted, and they were both in the EU project and national projects. Also, we draw some lessons from the national and synthesis reports on this program. We selected a bit of some programs of this mapping we did. And then some insight came also from the implementation design of the role play when we tested it. And so very briefly, what we saw is that civic education can indeed help shape personal efficacy and foster, therefore, the resistance from violent extremism, because they can introduce alternative perspectives. So it's really also a matter of introducing a sense of doubt also on the ideology that somebody has. We saw that coercive and top-down initiatives were less effective in doing that, because they were, for instance, they were less flexible in terms of target groups and also methodology. And also, as said before by Roberta, sometimes they happen to go into a counter indoctrination approach. Therefore, interdisciplinary and participatory approaches were seen much more promising in that field, because they could foster empathy, inclusion, mutual understanding, critical thinking, communicative skills. And so there is this, but the participatory approach was also, in a sense, beyond a pure scholarly methodology, and involved also co-development and co-evaluation and co-design by the target group. We did this in part with our role play because we involved social workers working in schools. So we have a feedback on the project that they implemented already. But this was helpful because we see that it is a way to codify some contentious, let's say, concepts in the realm of radicalization. We focus on role play and theater-based activities because they offer an opportunity to fictionally reenact everyday situation with like a shield of a character you're playing. They also help participants to put themselves into each other's shoes. So it was really something to prevent people that can have painful life trajectories to have a shield for their experiences, but also to understand different views. Having also these role plays in specific contexts help also to share spaces of dialogue. And it was clearly important in the involvement of the youth. With regard to the challenges, because there were also a few of those, a first challenge we saw was that there was a difficulty in establishing friendly and transparent connection between facilitators and participants, above all if the facilitators are also school teachers. What we did was we tested again in school, but with external staff, and that helped because students felt a bit more free to express their thoughts. Also in this matter, which is quite contentious and quite, it's not it's a difficult, sometimes more difficult topics and life experiences. Another problem constraint was that testing it in schools and with at risk is one thing. In prisons, it may involve a broader approach. Also, it can be seen. I'm talking now also about our deliverable, our role play. Can be seen inside a longer process. So specific chirurgical intervention may be less effective in those instances. We also touched upon the problem of defining concepts because sometimes they are over expensive. We say radicalization. We thought about not putting radicalization in the role play because we wanted to have something quite broad. But sometimes you then end up including into the radicalization framework dynamics that are not really radicalizing. And then the balance between customization, so targeting a specific group, and not going into stigmatization was also quite difficult to achieve. So if we want to customize something, well, also to be very aware that we have to avoid targeted stigmatization. So also to have prejudices in regard to the participants, to sometimes also find them have a choice bias, let's put it like that. So these briefly were the main points we found in the right of the policy brief.
Shall we move on to?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it. We will just give a very brief overview of what we have done in Work Package 9, and I will start as I am a urban researcher with the cities we were looking at. So we moved the whole thing from the country to the city level, and we had 5 very interesting cities: Florence, Pristina, Tbilisi, Vienna, and Helsinki. And when you look at these cities, the interesting thing is, or this what makes it very thrilling, is they differ enormously in terms of diversity, in terms of size. Some are capital cities, they all are capital cities except Florence. Some are within the EU, some are outside the EU. They have different contexts and different histories. And in light of that, we have to realize that there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to policy recommendation because every city has its own history, its own context. But still, we managed to come up with policy recommendations. that fit all of them. We applied again this methodology. Maybe you have heard it yesterday in the presentations for Helsinki and Vienna. So in each of these cities, the local teams applied this, the same methodology, first starting out by analyzing the city context, then moving on to public spaces, and then zooming in on one specific public space where they will do the field research using the game cards in interactive workshops. First of all, with stakeholders who are active in this specific public space, as residents, as resident activists, as social workers, as planners, and then the second interactive workshop with young people using this specific public space in order to mirror kind of what did the planners really want and what does the youth see? Does this have any effect? In terms of when we look once more at the cities, what are the problems or the challenges they're facing? When you think of public space in Florence, the first thing that comes to mind is tourism and how the population in the inner city has to cope with these large numbers of tourists. When you think about Vienna and Helsinki, then we have social welfare settings where much money goes into public space and into dealing with public space, public spending on public space. When you look at Pristina, then you see a post-conflict situation, which was also mirrored in the public space they were looking at the University of Pristina campus. So this is all these settings and all these contexts matter. But still, we were able to find some policy recommendations that kind of are important for all of these cities. First of all, there is the notion of keeping public spaces public. Commercialization, so public space in cities is really under threat by commercialization, gentrification, segregation, all these things are a threat to public space, so keep public space public. The second thing is, comes from the Vienna perspective, but I think it also applies to the other cities. There should be an emphasis when about public space and investing in public space in the densely built up inner city areas, where social economically weak people live, sometimes under very crowded housing conditions. So this is where the focus should go. There should be a good balance of bottom-up and top-down approaches when it comes to governance. On the other hand, we have also seen examples in Tbilisi where there is a huge public space where there is no governance whatsoever. The city bought the space, it's called Hippodrome, and people can simply do there what they want to, and it works perfectly well without any governance. So this bottom-up to top-down or no governance or very much governance is always the question. In cases like Helsinki and Vienna, we see that the governance or the governing public space in the city in Vienna, for example, there are 21 municipal departments working on public space, which makes everything very slow, and there is lots of negotiation. It takes like forever to plant a tree because there are 50 people who have to sign off on the tree. This is an extreme example, but this huge administration makes things very slow. So there could be some thing could be done better. Also, promotion of diversity is highly important in cities where many migrants live. So Vienna has moved on from integration policy to diversity policy. We heard about it yesterday also. They look at diversity within the municipal departments. Yeah, but still there is much to be done also in public space. And you might wonder why we look at public space and how this is connected to de-radicalization. We view it as this a field of primary prevention. So keep social cohesion and social space in public space is kind of this primary prevention targeted at everybody who lives in the city in order to avoid radicalization.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm supposed to be improvising for now, so I have some points. Yes. Just to reiterate some of the points that Ursula was saying, I think it was just coming from Finland, this radicalism, already radicalized groups are not that prevalent an issue, let's just say. That we realized with Kanerva that a lot of the de-radicalization policy in Finland is actually what we call implicit policy instead of explicit policy, and the welfare state has had an important role in this, unlike in our neighboring country, Sweden, where the cars are burning, just kind of like making reference to our Nordic sort of perspectives. That in Finland, the welfare state has been not thinned out to the extent that it has in Sweden. In at least some services, the areas have not segregated in the way that they have been in Sweden, because we didn't have an influx of migrants in Finland. In contrast, the Finns were migrating to Sweden in the 60s. So setting the basis for the wave of like segregated communities in Sweden. So we didn't have that. Recently, it's become an issue. So what we ended up like working on more is the role of the local government that we have been working with Kanerva before as well in enabling participation, citizen-led initiatives, and including larger groups of people. That this is kind of the possibility of working locally, not just like in terms of the spatial structures and planning, but also through co-governance would be a way in which we can then have people more included. And this is therefore like going back to what we were discussing last night, a way of this kind of local citizenship that is actually performed and practiced in a different way. So unlike in Vienna, I mean, of course, in Helsinki as well, this is a city established during the Russian Empire, like in its capital form. There is a lot of bureaucracy, but on the local level and considering citizen-led initiatives, we have much more flexibility. Euridice was also talking about this, that how migrant groups can be having a lot of sort of easy access to services, but also it's easier for them to suggest something like a workshop that becomes then part of a yearly program of the city, for instance. So this kind of, but it requires from the those in power and those in the administration flexibility and change in their thinking to start including people in this way and NGOs in this way as sort of partners. And that could be a way to do this. But of course, in our case, countries, they're not all of them are like fully like the statehood in Kosovo is not fully developed. So how do you then compare this to Finland and Austria? So some of these issues became quite challenging, but then issues from Florence could be also revisited in Vienna and Tbilisi and Helsinki, because of the newcomers are actually like often tourists, or in the case of Tbilisi, of course, Russian migrants after, particularly after the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. What we also want to be highlighting from our work package is these game cards. And I feel really bad that we didn't bring a set of the game cards. You have like your sets. I am really happy.
We are hiding ours. They are very.
And I think these should be also on DERAD website.
Petition in the.
So like the game cards.
I think they are on the website.
They're on the repository.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that we would be highlighting these as part of the achievements of the project. And I've already been planning how we can be using these further on. In these game cards are in these several languages, and they discuss belonging and challenges in those cities. So like you are led to start to discussing about the spaces and what makes you feel included, excluded, and instead of like starting from this like there is a problem of security in our area, you divert it in a different way, because in Nordic countries as well, there are these security walks, etc., that already start to securitize the space and start with the problem and profile people who are hanging out in these places. There's wonderful PhD thesis about this from Umut University. So they already profile particular local groups as problems. So we don't do that, but we like discuss it through the game cards, that if there would be something. And then we found out that there are actually like places that people find uncomfortable and where they don't feel included. And this can be also important for the youth who might not be feeling included for several different reasons, which I'm not going into now.
Thank you.
That's your.
Yes. So a lot of expectations put on me now. I don't really know who I am to advise anyone in this setting. Yes, I will. So no, I just want to say thanks for being part of the advisory board. I mean, when Umut asked me, I said yes. I like Umut, I like the project and so on. And I was a little bit curious what I could offer here. And I still don't know that really, to be completely honest. But I've actually learned a lot about the operations of the Horizon project. So that's, I mean, yeah, it's a cliche, but I really take a lot of stuff with me. Not only about the actual content of this, but also hopefully some of the next projects we're going to go into, where I'm not an advisory board member, but like an underground partner. All right, so I think I have three sort of questions based on what you're presenting now, and I also read a few of the reports yesterday and so on. But just a long way to get to these reports. Yeah.
And there's
because I think, I mean, listening now to your presentations, but also what we've been through the last days and so on, I think, I mean, that's the merits of this whole project that deserves to be mentioned, because it's, I really admire the sort of comprehensiveness of everything. I mean, from these, I mean, it uses many of the sort of tools we intuitively take up. I mean, we do mapping, we do, you know, and it's easy to promise such things, but yeah, I really like how it's actually done. I mean, I think there's both a super high sensitivity to context, as we also just ended. I mean, about the sort of this local turn and sort of acknowledging what is the sites, not only in terms of cities, but also local spaces within the city and so on. And so I think that's good. I also think the composition of the consortium is really interesting compared to many of these European framework, where you have the same sort of usual suspects, and you have you know, same countries and so on. But here there's it makes a difference also. I mean, sort of looking at what happens at the end of it, Tbilisi and so on. So I think it's that's in itself actually an interesting fact. And I think, I mean, again, it's something I think everyone sort of departing from a post-structuralist position at least strives to do this, sort of disturbing the taken for granted and so on. But I think that sort of underpins all these working packages, right? I mean, from the conceptual discussions and abstract notions of non-binary and so on, but it gets a life, right? And it does something to our vocabulary and how we understand concepts and so on. So I think this works super well. And also I think, as we saw the demonstration of the interactive map yesterday, I think that's super impressive. Again, it's really, really easy on a Zoom meeting deciding, we should have an interactive map with all the kind of inputs and so on, but another thing is really to do it, right? I mean, it's, and I think the question is, of course, how does such, something like an interactive map, how does it keep being relevant, and how does it keep alive after the funding from the EU stops here and so on? Can it be expanded, extended, and all these kind of things to keep being relevant, not just another dead cemetery of knowledge production on the internet. I don't know. I mean, yeah, we'll see, right? But I think it's good. But also the toolkits, I always, when I put in this work package, we have to design and so on, and there needs to be a toolkit. I'm like, what kind of toolkit? But then I'm looking at your toolkit, and they make a lot of sense. And
There's a toolkit.
I mean, I found this the road thing, and it's super impressive. I mean, and perhaps that's one of the questions. I mean, then to sort of take out, we can discuss and so on, or you can discuss, everyone can discuss. How? I mean, there's so many good resources now, so many good examples of how we can do this, but how do we actually scale it out and expand it so it doesn't end here, right? So that we all take home one of these nice thingies and then that's it, right? So there's this thing, how do we move from the project to actually getting it out to work and so on? Because I think many of these findings deserve to sort of get a life also after today, right? And that leads me to a sort of second thing that can be discussed. I mean, like in your comments today now, Ursula, I mean, we talk about the progressiveness of the initiatives and so on, and what we can do and so on. But we also have political realities where populations, and especially on governmental level, we see politicians calling for more restrictive, punitive measures. They're not calling for super progressive, liberalized ways to handle these problems. So how can we actually convince anyone that this is the way to go instead of the other way? And like living in Denmark, I mean, you probably heard about our so-called gaps or legislation, right? I mean, we have the vulnerable areas where people, if they're committing a crime, they can be sentenced twice the amount of prison time as you committed the crime outside these areas. I mean, that's what gets voters. I mean, it's not the opposite. If somebody said, no, you should do role-playing games, I mean, they would say, no, this is not working. So for instance, I mean, how, I mean, I work on cities myself. I mean, I work on solidarity, city sanctuary policies, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I like that, but I also sometimes have the feeling I'm sounding a little bit independent, right? That I look for things that confirm how I would like the world to look like, and not necessarily what it looks like in reality. So again, how do we take this into actually policy working and so on? Yeah, and then a last comment is this. So, and I don't know if that's it's just my impression from the last days, but there's been lots of focus on especially Islamist radicalization and so on, and perhaps also right from what I could hear from some of the stuff. But I think right now, if you look across Europe, one of the biggest mobilizing forces right now is actually the Gaza-Israel conflict, right? Where we see new antagonisms of people being in support of the Palestinian cause, or the opposite, and so on. So it's really, I mean, in Denmark, it's super polarized on all scales. I mean, from within the parliament to the population, right? And we could easily imagine this also could lead to sort of new forms of radicalization of different forms, not only, I mean, Muslim and Islamist radicalizations, but also like militant Jewish and what have you, right? I mean, or militant leftists, as we are seeing a little bit in the German context. So, I mean, how would what you have offered the world with DLAD sort of be able to also adapt to new forms of radicalization and so on, and perhaps be able to, to sort of let go perhaps of mainly looking at sort of more like the Muslim terrorist kind of stereotype, right? And if you go to a Danish context, that's basically the only thing when we talk about radicalization. There's no sort of imagination that radicalization could be something else. I remember some 10 years ago, I was doing some work on policy research dialogues, and at that time, the first Danish we call action plan against radicalization was being discussed in a task force in the Ministry of Integration at the time. And they had these think tanks with academics and so on, but it was so given from the beginning what the result was to be. You know, there was this, which you're challenging all of you in the project, this linear kind of from starting to grow your beard already, and then one day blowing it up, right? And just more like a matter of when are you at which stage, right? And even though it was disputed, refuted, and what have you, I mean, this was what they ended up with, right? I mean, so it's so difficult, at least again from what I know from Danish policy context, to imagine that could be other kinds of radicalization. So a lot of scattered thoughts, a few questions, and yeah, I don't know if that's much of advice, but at least there's something to discuss. Yes.
Just briefly on what also Miriam presented yesterday, this Räumenplatz we have been focusing on. There is a lot of illegalized young people there who are still asylum seekers because their asylum applications have been pending for years. And I'm coming to the question of what can the city actually really do? For example, they are not allowed to work in Austria. Austria forces asylum seekers to be unemployed. This is quite unique in Europe. So they have no money. They get shelter, they get a little bit of money for food, and that's about it. But they don't have any means to go to the cinema, or I don't know. So this is, and they are very visible in public space because this is the only space where they can spend their time for free. When we talk about radicalization, yes, there has been a lot of discussion about Muslim radicalization in Austria and in Vienna, but what things, and these are the pictures that Miriam showed yesterday. There is about a lot of right-wing politicians appearing at Räumenplatz and saying things like, this district is ours. So we come back also to this question of belonging. So there's a clear articulation, they don't belong here. We don't want them here. So then we come back to the question of whose space is this really? And then we have the city of Vienna. The city is a social democratic island in a very conservative / right-wing country. And they, on the other hand, really refuse to really talk about these things. It's not that bad. It works quite well. Yeah? So you have this kind of different levels. On the one hand, what can a city really do? They cannot, they could try to employ asylum seekers, but this is national law. Yeah? Then you find the right wing. I mean, there has been an incident at Räumenplatz where even the identitarian movement showed up during a pro-migrant protest, hanging a banner there. So the identitarian movement in Austria is this far right wing of this is the furthest right we get. So there is a lot of contestation going on there, yeah, and lots of different angles. Then again, the area around Räumenplatz is a majority area, which means there are 60 to 70% of people living there have a migrant background. So I think most of them have a sense of belonging there because this is where they are living. And the right wing is kind of playing to their base, saying, this is still Vienna, and this has to be Vienna, yeah, and this is our space. So there's really this contestation of whose place is this, yeah. And closing the eyes and saying, oh, everything is just fine. Miriam mentioned some incidents with knives, and one should be open and talk about things and not say, no, everything is just fine. This is the wrong approach, I would argue.
Should I? Okay, on the dissemination, this is one of the main problem of most horizon projects, I guess, because in 3 years you are very busy with developing your own tools and crossing the boxes of things of your task, but then what to do? And from the experience from other projects, the real work, if you want, of dissemination starts at the very end of the project. It's something that you cannot do before because you are really too busy with developing your work. So from, again, experience from other projects, we have different ways of keeping alive these tools. First, for us, our researchers in the academic circles, obviously. So other colleagues who have been involved or are thinking of being involving in this topic. presenting the material and publishing. This is one of the main issue for us, publishing articles and papers on this material, because just this booklet is not enough, obviously. So the first, our first task after when we leave is to write a paper, an academic paper. What we've done with other projects to write it together with other colleagues from other disciplines, particular pedagogy, so that they can, or sociology, because they can, for example, help us in doing also some qualitative work. Because one of the issues that was discussed also in our panel yesterday was how to measure, how to evaluate that this material is useful, is beneficial. So we've done some questionnaire during the, but it's more sort of qualitative. And I have also to thank all those who were involved in developing our material, Azret, Stephen, Roman, Jasmine, Romana Mihai, and Vorodomir, by the way. And especially because in these academic circles and many conferences, current and future conferences will be more and more interdisciplinary. So it's always going to be growing more difficult to find pure, for example, legal conferences. Now, most scholars understood that interdisciplinarity is a key. You have to find solutions to complex problems by interacting, by being able to talk with other colleagues. And Mattia was mentioning how difficult it is. It's not obviously easy. We developed this material with people coming from the other contexts. Obviously, they had other language, other methodologies, and were to be able to discuss with them and find common solutions. And so we already pair and work together with the Faculty of Pedagogy in Bolzano, where they train future teachers and future social workers. So they've been using already this material to give us a feedback. Then obviously another circle, let's say, is the practitioners from schools or prisons. And we already are in contact. Yesterday, we heard the presentation of a colleague from Spain. We've been able to enter in jail to collect interviews. We reckon that it's going to be very difficult. So we imagine to work more rather than in prison, because in Italy, at least, it's very difficult, but with those in probation or in community service, this sort of environment. Then obviously associations, NGOs are, so that because many of them, many of these associations, they need material like this one in the context of broader programs they already have. They are really in need of this type of material because sometimes they lack tools and then also the European or international level. So we all know that there is the RAN, the Radicalization Awareness Network, and we've been trying to get in contact with them. And obviously, I mean, whoever has other contacts, welcome. But in July, there will be this large conference of the Council of European Studies in Lyon, precisely on radicalization and extremism. And there we expect to disseminate the material and try to get in contact with people from the RAN, because I think that's for us a perfect environment, a perfect network to use our material.
But then, I mean, I just wanted to add, then you never know.
Yeah.
Basically, we saw it's a line of research that we are developing from 10 years at least, I think. And we saw that this material gets alive on its own. We developed 5 years ago, I was mentioning that to Robin, I think, yesterday. We developed a board game for asylum seekers, and now it is used in schools for majority language speakers in the context of civic education and citizenship. So you never know how this is going to be used, but it's, I mean, it's there, then it can be used in different fields, you know.
Yeah. But I can just add, I mean, I think something you said earlier as well. I mean, I think it's super important, this, almost like mainstreaming. It's not only about
Absolutely.
It's super fascinating going to be able to go to the prison and admire that kind of, but it's also equally important to be able to sit in a different kind of language.
Yeah, no, we were very careful not to, also the language we use, not to use too many times radicalization,
Exactly.
violent extremism, because this can be also scary for teachers. They don't want to perhaps use this material in class because it can be scary. So we try to avoid that language.
Yeah, I think you also said something similar, Maggie, about
I mean, the organisations we were looking at Work Package 8 were not de-radicalisation initiatives. They were initiatives that were mainly geared towards social inclusion, challenging social disadvantage, all of those things. And so we deliberately didn't use those terms. We were looking at challenging the risks that may lead to radicalisation. But I also think it's important to take some of the findings back to the organisations. You know, for example, the organisation we work with in Glasgow, taking our findings back to them and talking to them about it. I think that's important that, you know, because people give up their time for you, it's important that you share that knowledge with them. I think that's really important. But I also wanted to say that maybe I missed from when I was doing the slideshow that what we found was quite often, although there was a cause that brought people to the initiatives, that's not what kept them there. What kept them there was the relationships that they built. When I spoke about, they felt like, a lot of them felt like family. We're like a family here. That's what kept them there. It wasn't so much the football. That's what brought them there. That's what enticed them in the first place. Or some of them actually said they were tricked into going by, they might have had a worker, you know, a drug support worker, put them there, and then they stayed. They enjoyed the football, they enjoyed the games, but they stayed because of the relationships built. And I think that's really important.
That's why we need the Be Relate project.
Just about this projectification, actually Kanerva's PhD thesis back in the day was about projectification, precisely also addressing the tools that the local associations in Helsinki were developing for interaction and for like local democracy. And these tools ended up like somehow sitting somewhere being lost, while a new set of tools was being developed in a new project. And when we joined this project, it was kind of obvious that we would want to be continuing some of the work that we were doing before. And joining the project, I realized that yes, there's Full Power, there are all these other projects of Umut that are behind this project. So it's not just 3 years. And now we're moving on to the next phase where a lot of people have different kinds of projects which they are already starting, applied for. And then the question is kind of, on one hand, can we be bringing these same kind of tools to the next projects, and would that give them the tools a second life? In a way, I'm not worried about the academics and the projects like having the academic continuity, because that would be somehow there. Maybe not all of us want to be doing radicalism research in the future, but maybe something else that is related. And then. But then what I am thinking about, like, who would be, so besides the tools that might be unused, and these are really great ideas that we should be actually bringing them to these communities if they want to take them, because they did not plan them themselves. And it's great to hear that that's being used in school. But I'm worried about like the groups that we involve for 3 years, or I don't know, 6 months or whatever we involve them, and then we kind of abandon them.
Yeah.
And that I think is an issue that we should be looking into also when planning the next projects that we would somehow.
Especially when it's very participatory research and you're there for a length of time and you build relationships, you know, to an extent with the participants, and then you disappear. I think it's important to go back. and talk about.
For me, the NGOs is a very big issue, and that's why they don't want to work with
Yeah.
academics. Ultimately, the other partners like consortium, they don't see what they get out of it.
Do you feel that they've been used?
Yes, we always heard from any NGO that they work for any kind of project, they say there's that one.
Yeah, but Miriam, yesterday, we were talking last night, she was having this great point about like, maybe we should have the NGOs quite in the same country as the research team would be. And also, or like in like longer term interaction, maybe from the same place, and then working with kind of the same topic in a more sustained way, so we don't have to be finding some NGO for some interaction activity, but they would be already there, or that this activity would be like more inbuilt already from the beginning in this, or somehow like with Jasmine, we could be involving youth centers and these from Finland, working with your sort of youth centers and seeing the difference, so that we would be bringing the NGO actors to meet the NGOs and municipal bodies in this project, and not just meet with us, the academics, because that might be a bit boring apart from the social aspects of it.
Yeah, I can say we actually.
No, I was going to say once again to this Matilda project is always mentioned, and in the beginning I thought they did the best thing because they had 12 universities and 12 NGOs in the same country, right? So that made the consortium 24 partners. And I think it was Andrea who was speaking at the kickoff event in Bolzano. He said that there are 70 people there, and it's always like a conference, not the kickoff event. So the aspirations of putting your private consortium are always very high because you want to work in like different countries, etc. And I really think that getting an NGO partner in each country would be a fantastic idea, right? Because then you really know how to work with the more partners, but then the consortium come beyond this. Then how are you going to handle that? Plus, for some of the work that we do, I don't think that the NGOs they really need us. Right? Yes, and I think we can just see a section.
It is, for me, it was a very useful experience to be part of this project and the Open project now, but because, especially this tool, but we are the organization that are like peace building organization. We have a lot of young people in our network working for 6 years, and we trained ourselves. For example, to use this tool, you need to know how to deal with the emotions that will arise, because it's a powerful tool. It's not a tool like a tool. It's really bring emotions on the table. People get like 2-3 days after they can call and say, I'm still kind of attached to like what will really happen if I did you do? Absolutely.
No, you're right.
But we are kind of equipped to deal with that. So not every NGO fits.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to. I agree with you here. That's kind of a natural issue. But we need we need people who are willingly like to learn, like to because I learn every meeting and every conference, whatever, every presentation is something new for me, which is good. That's your job, to invent new things that you are supposed to. Our thing is to take something which can be done in practical way. So I think it's beneficial both for you and for civil society organization, but not all civil society organizations. Because, for example, these football associations, these dance clubs, I don't know, they are not equipped with this social human interaction in the sense of developing personal or whatever, preventing them, because they are focused on their aim to become the best football player or dancer. You know, they are shouting because I was in sports, so I know that they are not very friendly to you. It's a drill, go, jump, run, jump. In the youth field, you are like encouraging how you feel, what you think. So it's not, as you said, one size fits all. Not all NGOs are.
I fully agree with Jasmine, because we had this problem in Bolzano with a class that came to our institute to do, and they booked, because this is something that we offer in our institute, these activities with classes. And they had booked, because there is a list of possible activities, this particular game. But a few days before, we found out that this class was really problematic. And then we decided, because it was just me and Mattia, because as you said, we are not equipped to deal with these to switch to another activity, because this one, as you said, is a very powerful.
Basically.
No, we really feared that we were not ready to deal with certain problems and emotions that could arise. And so we decided to ask for a social worker who is experienced in that to deal with that, to use this material with that class. No, it can be very dangerous.
The organisation that we were with, the football organisation, it wasn't a football club. It was these were the coaches had all come through. They were either drug and alcohol abuse and had been part of the justice system, homelessness, all of these things. So people were coming to drop in. It was a drop-in place to play football, but it wasn't a football club. But the coaches were all trained in CBD training. You know, they were very skilled. It wasn't actually a club. It was just they had teams. They played for the homeless World Cup. There's a homeless World Cup where homeless people are out, and they have a World Cup that's based everywhere. And I think Scotland had won it a few years ago, and they set up a team. So it's actually a kind of drop-in football session. Very interesting. In fact,
The other thing that needs to be mentioned is that EU does not necessarily own these horizon projects. It's quite impossible to use their social media networks. It's quite difficult to get into the Joint Research Center. Even we were to organize a policy event in Brussels. Joint Research Center doesn't have an email address. There's a phone number where you can call, but it's the EU switchboard. You can write them a letter. So, you know, we want to, when we're thinking of organizing this event, we thought that this is where we should go to. And then we talked to the project officer and project officer, she's not in the position to put us in touch with the Joint Research Center, which is supposed to help practical horizon projects to gain policy relevance. So, for example, the material that you produce, I mean, yes, we put it on our website, to Twitter, whatever, like as much as we can do it, but there's ultimately like a limit to what we can do. Wherever, if it is ever mentioned in the EU social media, I mean, that it has reached so many more people. Once again, another thing is that we write all these reports, you upload them to the Commission portal, okay, and you have no idea about the futures.
Yeah,
You don't really, you cannot really trace actually what happens to these reports afterwards. Are they ever used? Is there a reflection? The other comments that you get are very procedural things like did you use the EU logo, or do you have whatever.
But from the experience, again, from other projects, I think that each of us should really be responsible for keeping alive and disseminate and use and spread out the words about your material, the cards or this material or your concept or your model. This is unfortunately something that it's up to you. We have to do it.
I know, but I mean,
it's not the end of the project for us.
Things like the exhibition and the map and everything, the EU should, they should be helping you.
In Belgrade, for example, we did not even know whether the Commission representative was going to send someone to the opening.
And there are too many projects, and I think it's unfeasible for them, and we cannot expect. I mean, we should thank them that they give us the money.
There's a cacophony of all these things in India. It's like everyone's just trying to, we have this thing, it is really important, but okay, so we're talking about this thing on a Saturday morning, but there's also no platform to talk about this with the Commission.
Yeah.
So you talk to the project officer, and they always listen to you, and they always say that you're right. But I mean, there's really no platform where, let's say, the Horizon can go to Brussels and they can talk about project experience, like what can be better, what can be different, etc. So I attended a few meetings in Brussels, for example, and over there, it is this whole branding of how successful the EU is. You sit down and you listen to these politicians, and it's always the EU presidency that are standing there, civil servants. I know people from Sweden sitting that they heard about all this terror happening in all those countries around the world, and then they drove home to realize what a safe country that they are living in. Yeah, and that is here now, to show to the rest of all, like some Estonians standing up saying like how amazing the insecure EU has become, and what can we do about it? It is really. Laura and I were at one of these meetings recently. I mean, even the commissioner cannot take it seriously. Sorry, even the commissioner I think so is the.
Umut is our sponsor and is also recorded. I mean, we should be a bit more thankful.
So.
Yeah.
There's always a limit to what projects can do. You know, we can really go to conference, we can all of stuff. But the commission also needs to give us a hand. If they really truly believe that Horizon projects can really have a leverage in terms of how policies.
I mean, we could just do like academic research with all this money.
There is already actually a Horizon, and there was a Horizon call for looking into what migration projects have achieved. So, that was a call to going through the migration projects that have already achieved for 3 years, the end gap, so there's even more stuff.
I think there's a comment down here, or the raised hand.
What way to think about uptake is think about investments across the project, right? So the presentations, because they're amazing. Fabulous. We're all one of the challenges
Because you say
generic challenges. And it seems to me that we interesting to utilize as to whether we can back on projects and hearing about the other projects that is all the private prevention. Or we can at least begin to identify some scope conditions under which the private prevention measures are unsuccessful, knowing that evaluation is very, very difficult. The project timelines make it basically impossible to the project period. Very generous. And so there are these other things in play. But just in thinking about your work and hearing about what policy commissions, the commission on which primary prevention is more likely to be effective. That way.
Okay.
Sorry, I was closing the session. Okay,
About this important step, just want to make a very short clarification, Martin. You were earlier referring to different types of radical violence, and you were talking about jihadists and ultra-left militant groups. I just wanted to clarify, you meant right-wing radicals only in Israel, right?
Sorry?
When you talk about militant Jews, you meant right-wing radicals in Israel?
Yes.
Right, not other movements.
No, I don't know if it,
Just make it clear.
Has been recorded. This clarification. It's in the transcript.
It was intended as a question.
Yeah, I think it was intended as a question.
So I follow the comment, but the question was at the end.
Are the scope conditions that would make a primary prevention effective?
But for us, I mean, we discussed also yesterday. First, I think that instead of looking for civic prevention that works on or aim to sameness, so common values that are all the same for us, we should change a sort of paradigm and opt for togetherness. Sounds love and peace slogan, but it is from sameness to togetherness, trying to work on what put us together, what we have in common. Second element, common values should be discussed in their limitations, contradictions, imperfections. This does not reduce their values. There is a bit of fear that if you present civic education or common values as with their limitations, then this is an attempt to the value of the values, the value of the values or the themselves. Focusing on understanding and knowledge of the common values rather than focusing on or assessing. There are even countries where they assess the willingness to believe, which is very scary. It's really entering the ideology of a person, which is a Orwellian sort of approach. So instilling the doubt is already a lot that we can obtain from this type of material. Critical thinking is perhaps too much, is really the result of the education, should be at least. So for our material, instilling the doubt, it's already something. And another guideline, if you want, another lesson is to link these values to everyday life. So they should, because a problem of common values is that they are perceived as rhetoric slogans. Human rights, minority rights are slogans. And so try to link them to everyday life, something that participants, students, adults also can see as working, as valuable, as relevant in their lives. And then the methodology. So in all of these interventions, programs, the methodology, so co-participation, creative, active learning is key. It's too important. We cannot really think of passing or transmitting or presenting these, talking about these values with traditional, boring methods. You have to find creative methods. That's a key.
And that takes time.
And this takes time. Obviously.
Those take time, and the time allocated for these types of methodologies, it needs to be longer, needs to be greater, because they take
yes,
time.
yes. You need a program, so it's not enough. Obviously, yeah. Our material is just a little drop in the ocean of a broader program. We're not so ambitious to think that this is enough.
If I can add something on the methodology precisely. Also, the approach is not to infusing people with, because I'm confusing people not with concepts,
yes,
with monolithic, but with methodology as well. So giving people this also as a methodology to understand the world, to put them into doubts, okay, to doubt, to offer them alternative views. Yeah. So that's precisely of the.
We did that, but one of the books was poetry. A poetry workshop with the footballers, and it's also about speaking to people in a language that they understand, in a way that they understand, and not using academic terms, but everyday language that's embedded in their lives. But the poetry workshop was really useful because we did it as a collaborative exercise with the mental health worker at the organisation, and with the participants, and just offering people a different way, or a way of expressing themselves in their own terms, in their own time, in their own words. And I think that's really important, because it kind of breaks down that gap between the kind of academic situation in the community. It narrows that gap too.
Yeah, I guess just to add on this. Is sort of horizontality, increasing horizontal connections between different groups, and this is what we tried. That's why urban space is so interesting and important, because you have the co-presence of a lot of things. But what we found, and that's one of the policy recommendations, that we should have like more of the public and also more of the social work taking place in this on-site context. What we have been emphasizing for a long time from Helsinki group is this diminishing the gap between the authorities and the citizens, so that the citizens are always being othered, like any types of citizens. Then you have particular groups that are being othered even more. So they are like the particular vulnerable groups. And so also like, when you have the participation of the citizens, they are usually not the right citizens because they are not including everything that the concept of citizens should be including. So you are always the wrong citizen. And so you are always being uttered as like incomplete, not quite there. And then some groups are being like uttered even more. So this gap should be lowered, and a lot of the people from the NGOs to the public authorities, they should realize that they are also citizens. And so togetherness is a really great concept. That would be also putting people on equal footing. So the voices from the people using this space should be equal, whatever is their background and their sort of performative role in that context.
And I think also there's a lot of invisible groups out there that are not being considered. It's quite often with a lot of NGOs, but even with, Horizon projects, it's youth 18 to 27, 18 to 30. There's lots of youth. What about the 30 to 50-year-olds? That there's a whole other age groups that are being overlooked that are kind of invisible, I think, as well.
Yeah, so all the imaginings of this togetherness and us should always recognize this failure and address that as like with the best abilities. So that's what we've been theorizing.
Finally, you don't know where this projects go. I received an email last week from someone who wants to do a placement with all our project.
Still have it.
The back.
I still have relevance, uploading figures of this project because they remain up there in public, and Roman was kind enough to host the Wallflower website as well, which is going to be an issue where I'm going to host the website, where we're going to host it, etc. But I mean, they serve a purpose.
Yeah. No, but just a remark again. It's really up to us. We cannot expect the European Commission or the social media or the internet that by chance someone enter in. It's up to us. We have to really work now on the dissemination of these materials. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but.
Well, at GCU, we are trying to include the wider outputs from Volpar and from DERAD to this new published platform that GCU are building. And that includes bringing the websites from both, because the websites will run out, they're time limited, but if we can bring them over to the GCU platform, so that's what I'm also trying to do, is bring this repository of work. Working with some of the archivers at GCU and to do that too, when I have time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Okay. No, that's not mine.